Maya walked slowly down the cold street. Her thin jacket did not keep the winter wind away from her body. She had not eaten anything for 2 days. Her stomach made loud noises. She felt weak and tired. The snow was falling on the ground. Her old shoes had big holes in them. The cold snow touched her feet through the holes. Each step was painful. She carried an old violin case in her right hand. The case was heavy for her weak arms. Maya stopped in front of a big restaurant. The name Le Jardin was written in gold letters above the door. Through the large windows, she could see people eating expensive food. They wore beautiful clothes and jewelry. The warm light from inside made the restaurant look like a magical place. She had walked past this restaurant many times before. She always dreamed of eating there, but she knew her family could never afford such expensive food. Her father had lost his job 6 months ago. Her mother worked 2 jobs but still could not pay for everything they needed. Maya looked at her reflection in the restaurant window. Her face was thin and pale. Her long black hair was messy. Her clothes were old and had small holes. She looked very different from the rich people inside. She thought about her grandmother. Her grandmother had died 2 years ago. Before she died, she gave Maya her old violin. "This violin is special," her grandmother had said. "It has been in our family for many years. Promise me you will keep playing music," Maya had promised. She practiced every day, even when she was hungry or cold. Music was the only thing that made her feel better. When she played the violin, she forgot about all her problems. Now she stood outside the restaurant with an idea. Maybe she could play music for the people inside. Maybe they would give her some food in return. She had heard stories of street musicians who earned money by playing for people. Maya took a deep breath. She walked to the front door of the restaurant. Her heart was beating very fast. She was scared, but she was also very hungry. A man in a black suit stood by the door. He was the person who welcomed guests to the restaurant. His name was Pierre. He had worked at this restaurant for 10 years. He was used to seeing rich and important people every day. Pierre looked at Maya with surprise when she approached him. He could see that she was poor and hungry. He did not like having poor people near his restaurant. He thought they would make his rich customers uncomfortable. "Excuse me," Maya said in a quiet voice. Her voice was shaking because she was nervous. "May I play my violin for a piece of food?" Pierre stared at her for a moment. Then he started to laugh. His laugh was loud and mean. "You want to play music for food?" he said. "This is a fine restaurant, not a place for beggars." Other workers from the restaurant heard Pierre laughing. They came to see what was happening. There was Marie, who served food to the customers. There was Jean, who cooked in the kitchen. There was Sophie, who cleaned the tables. "Look at this girl," Pierre told them. "She thinks she can play music here for food." All the workers started laughing too. Their laughter was cruel and hurtful. Maya felt her face become red with shame. But she did not leave. She was too hungry to give up. "Please," she said, "I can play beautiful music. I have been practicing for many years." "Beautiful music?" Marie said while laughing. "Look at your violin case. It looks like it will fall apart. How can you make beautiful music with a broken instrument?" The violin case was indeed very old. The leather was cracked and faded. The corners were worn out. But inside was her grandmother's precious violin. Maya knew it was still good, even if the case looked bad. "I don't think you should let her play here," Jean said to Pierre. "The customers will not like it. They come here for a quiet, elegant dinner. They don't want to hear noise from a street girl." Sophie nodded in agreement. "Yes, she will only bring down the reputation of our restaurant. Rich people don't want to see poor people when they are eating." Pierre thought about what his workers were saying. He looked at Maya again. She was still standing there, holding her violin case. Her eyes were filled with hope and desperation. More customers were arriving at the restaurant. They looked at Maya with curious and sometimes disgusted expressions. Pierre knew he had to make a decision quickly. "Fine," he said finally. "You can play, but not inside the restaurant. You can play in the back alley, near the kitchen door, and you can only play for 30 minutes. If you disturb our customers, I will call the police." Maya felt a mix of relief and sadness. She was happy that she could play, but she was hurt by their cruel words. "Thank you," she said softly. Pierre pointed to a narrow alley behind the restaurant. "Go around the building. You can set up back there. But remember, don't make too much noise." Maya walked around the building to the back alley. It was even colder there because the wind was stronger. There were garbage containers and boxes scattered around. The smell was not pleasant. The ground was dirty and covered with snow. She found a small space near the kitchen door where she could stand. Through a small window, she could see the kitchen workers preparing food. The food looked delicious. Her stomach made loud noises again. Maya set down her violin case and opened it carefully.
Inside was her grandmother's violin.
It was made of beautiful dark wood. Even though it was old, it still looked elegant and well cared for. Her grandmother had always kept it clean and polished. She picked up the violin and held it under her chin. She closed her eyes and remembered her grandmother's words. Music comes from the heart, Maya. When you play with love, people will feel it. Maya could hear the restaurant workers still talking and laughing about her through the kitchen window. Some customers had also gathered near the windows to see what was happening. She could hear them making jokes about the poor girl with the violin, but Maya did not let their words stop her. She was hungry, cold, and tired, but she had her music, and her music had never failed her before. She lifted the bow and prepared to play. She thought about all the beautiful songs her grandmother had taught her. She thought about the love and care her grandmother had put into teaching her. She thought about the promise she had made. Maya was ready to show everyone what real music sounded like. She was ready to prove that beautiful things could come from unexpected places. She was ready to play her heart out for just a piece of food. Maya stood in the cold alley behind the restaurant. The workers inside were still laughing and making jokes about her. She could hear them clearly through the thin kitchen window. "Did you see her old shoes?" Marie said while washing dishes. "They have such big holes. How can she walk in those? And that jacket," Jean added while cutting vegetables. "It looks like it came from a garbage bin. I feel embarrassed just looking at her." Sophie was cleaning pots and pans. "I bet she doesn't even know how to play that violin properly. She probably found it somewhere and thinks she can fool people into giving her money." Their words hurt Maya's feelings, but she tried not to listen. She focused on getting her violin ready. She tightened the strings and checked that everything was in the right position. Inside the restaurant, some customers had noticed the commotion. They came to the windows to see what was happening. A man in an expensive suit pointed at Maya and said to his wife, "Look, dear, there's a street girl out there. How amusing." His wife, who wore a diamond necklace, laughed. "Oh my, what is she doing with that violin? Does she think she's going to perform for us?" At another table, a group of businessmen were making bets. "I'll give her 5 minutes before she gives up," said one man. "I think she'll quit in 3 minutes," said another. "Look how cold and hungry she looks. Poor people don't have the strength to do anything properly." A young couple at a table near the window were also watching Maya. The woman felt a little sorry for her. "Maybe we should give her some money," she whispered to her boyfriend. But her boyfriend shook his head. "Don't be silly. If you give money to one beggar, they'll all come here. This restaurant will lose its good reputation." Maya could see all these people watching her through the windows. Some were pointing at her. Some were laughing. Some were taking pictures with their phones. She felt like an animal in a zoo. Pierre, the man who welcomed guests, came outside to check on Maya. "Remember," he said in a stern voice, "you have 30 minutes. Don't play too loudly. And don't ask customers for money directly. If they want to give you something, that's their choice." Maya nodded. She understood the rules. She was grateful for any chance to earn some food. Pierre went back inside and immediately started talking to the other workers. "I hope I made the right decision," he said. "If the manager finds out about this, I might lose my job." "Don't worry," Jean said. "She'll probably play some terrible music for a few minutes and then leave. Street people don't have real talent." The restaurant's manager, Mr. Beaumont, was in his office upstairs. He had not yet noticed what was happening outside. He was busy counting the day's money and planning the menu for tomorrow. Maya positioned herself in the best spot she could find in the alley. The ground was wet and cold, but she had no choice. She opened her violin case completely and put it on the ground in front of her. If people wanted to give her money, they could put it in the case. A few customers inside the restaurant were still watching her with curiosity. Some had returned to their meals, but others stayed by the windows to see what would happen. "This should be interesting," said an elderly man to his dinner companion. "I wonder if she actually knows how to play that thing." His friend, an elderly woman, adjusted her glasses to see better. "I doubt it. These street children usually just pretend to have talent. They think people will give them money out of pity." The kitchen workers had finished laughing and were trying to get back to work. But they kept looking out the window at Maya. They wanted to see her fail so they could have another good laugh. I bet she doesn't even know how to hold the violin properly, Marie whispered to Sophie. Or maybe she'll play some terrible noise and hurt our ears, Sophie whispered back. Maya could feel everyone's eyes on her. She knew they were all expecting her to fail. They thought she was just a poor, hungry girl who didn't know anything about music. But Maya knew something they didn't know. She had been playing the violin since she was 6 years old. Her grandmother had been an excellent teacher. Every day after school, Maya would practice for hours. Even when her family had problems with money, Maya never stopped practicing. Her grandmother had taught her many different types of music. She knew classical pieces by famous composers. She knew folk songs from their country. She knew modern songs that young people liked. She had learned to play with feeling and emotion. Maya took a deep breath and tried to calm her nerves. She thought about her grandmother's voice saying, "Maya, when you play music, you must forget everything else. Forget the people watching you. Forget your worries. Just let the music flow from your heart." She looked up at the dark sky. Snow was still falling softly. The alley was quiet except for the sounds coming from the busy kitchen. She could hear cars driving on the street nearby. She could hear people talking and laughing inside the warm restaurant. Maya closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered all the times her grandmother had played for her. Her grandmother's music had always been beautiful and full of emotion. It could make people cry or make them feel happy. It could tell stories without words. "I will play like grandmother taught me," Maya thought to herself. "I will show them that music is more important than money or fancy clothes." She lifted the violin and placed it under her chin. The wood felt familiar and comfortable against her skin. She picked up the bow with her right hand. Her fingers found their positions on the strings automatically. Maya was ready to begin. She didn't know that her life was about to change forever. She didn't know that the people who were laughing at her now would soon be amazed by her talent. She only knew that she had to play her best music to earn a piece of food. The kitchen workers stopped what they were doing and looked out the window. The customers inside the restaurant turned their attention to the alley. Everyone was waiting to see what the poor girl with the old violin would do. Maya took one last deep breath. Then she began to play. Maya drew the bow across the violin strings for the first time. A single clear note filled the cold air of the alley. The sound was pure and beautiful. It was nothing like what the people watching had expected to hear. Inside the kitchen, Marie dropped the plate she was washing. The sound of Maya's violin had surprised her. Jean stopped chopping vegetables and looked up. Sophie put down her cleaning cloth and turned toward the window. That actually sounds good," Marie whispered. Maya continued playing. She had chosen to start with Pachelbel's Canon, one of her grandmother's favorite pieces. The melody was gentle and peaceful. Each note flowed smoothly into the next one. The customers inside the restaurant began to notice the music too. The man in the expensive suit stopped talking to his wife. "Do you hear that?" he asked. His wife stopped eating and listened carefully. "Yes, it's beautiful." "Where is it coming from?" "It's that girl outside," the man said with surprise in his voice. "The one we were laughing at." At the businessmen's table, the conversation about their bet had stopped. One of them said, "I don't think this is what we expected." Another man nodded. "She really can play. Listen to how smooth and perfect each note is." Maya played with her eyes closed. She let the music take control of her fingers. She remembered every lesson her grandmother had given her. She remembered the feeling of sitting beside her grandmother, watching her play this same piece. Her grandmother had told her, "Maya, this piece is about love and peace. When you play it, think about all the beautiful things in the world. Think about flowers growing in spring. Think about birds singing in the morning. Think about people who care about each other." As Maya played, she forgot about the cold. She forgot about her hunger. She forgot about the people who had laughed at her. All she could think about was the music flowing from her heart through her fingers. Inside the restaurant, more people were starting to listen. A woman at a corner table said to her husband, "That music is so lovely. It's making me feel emotional." Her husband, who usually only cared about business and money, found himself listening carefully too. "It reminds me of something," he said. "Maybe music I heard when I was a child." The young couple who had been debating whether to help Maya were now completely focused on her performance. "She's incredible," the woman said. "I've never heard street music like this before. Her boyfriend was amazed too. She plays better than some professional musicians I've heard in concert halls. In the kitchen, the workers had completely stopped working. They stood by the window listening to Maya's music. Pierre, who had been so mean to Maya earlier, felt something strange happening in his chest. The music was touching his heart in a way he didn't understand. I didn't expect this, Pierre said quietly. Jean the cook was known for being tough and never showing emotions, but now his eyes were getting wet with tears. My mother used to play violin, he said. She died when I was young. This music reminds me of her. Sophie was also feeling emotional. How can someone so young play with such feeling? She asked. It's like the music is telling a story. Maya continued with the canon, building to the more complex parts of the piece. Her fingers moved quickly and precisely on the strings. The bow danced across the violin, creating layers of beautiful sound. Some customers had moved from their tables to stand closer to the windows. They wanted to hear the music better. A few had even put on their coats and stepped outside despite the cold weather. An elderly woman with gray hair came outside and stood at the edge of the alley. She listened with tears in her eyes. Beautiful, she whispered. Simply beautiful. A middle-aged man joined her. Then another woman. Soon a small group of people had gathered outside to listen to Maya play. Maya didn't notice the growing crowd. She was lost in her music. She transitioned smoothly from Pachelbel's canon to another piece her grandmother had taught her, a folk song from their homeland. This song was more lively and cheerful. It told the story of a young girl who worked hard and never gave up on her dreams. The change in music surprised everyone. They realized that Maya knew more than just one song. She was a real musician with a wide knowledge of different types of music. She knows multiple pieces, someone in the crowd said with admiration. And she plays them all perfectly, added another person. Inside the restaurant, Mr. Beaumont, the manager, had finally come downstairs. He had heard unusual sounds and wanted to know what was happening. When he saw the crowd of his customers gathered by the windows and doors, he was confused. What is going on here? He asked Pierre. Pierre's face was red with embarrassment. There's a girl outside playing violin, sir. I gave her permission to play in the alley. Mr. Beaumont was angry at first. You did what? Why would you allow a street performer near my restaurant? But then he heard Maya's music. The folk song was reaching its most beautiful part. Maya's violin sang with joy and hope. The melody was so lovely that even Mr. Beaumont, who was always worried about business and money, stopped to listen. My goodness, Mr. Beaumont said quietly. Who is this girl? Just someone who asked to play for food, Pierre answered. But sir, I had no idea she could play like this. Mr. Beaumont listened for a few more minutes. He watched his customers, who were all paying attention to Maya's music instead of their expensive meals. But strangely, they didn't look upset. They looked happy and moved by the beautiful music. Maya finished the folk song and paused for a moment. She opened her eyes and saw the crowd that had gathered. She was surprised to see so many people listening to her. Some were smiling. Some had tears in their eyes. No one was laughing anymore. For a moment, Maya felt nervous again. She hadn't expected so many people to pay attention to her music. But then she remembered her grandmother's words. Maya, if people stop to listen to your music, it means you are sharing something good with them. Never be afraid to share beautiful things. Maya smiled softly and prepared to play another piece. She chose a more modern song, one that young people would recognize. But she played it in her own style, adding classical techniques that made it sound elegant and sophisticated. The crowd grew larger. People walking by on the street heard the music and came to see where it was coming from. Some were other restaurant customers. Some were just people who happened to be in the neighborhood. Maya's music was creating something magical in that cold alley. People who had never spoken to each other before were standing together, united by the beautiful sounds coming from her violin. Rich and poor, young and old, all were equally moved by her talent. No one was laughing at Maya anymore. No one was making cruel jokes. Everyone was beginning to understand that they were witnessing something very special. Word about Maya's incredible music began to spread quickly through the restaurant. Customers who were sitting far from the windows heard others talking about the amazing violin player outside. They left their tables to see what everyone was talking about. A waiter named David was serving soup to a table when the customers asked him, "Who is that girl playing violin? She sounds like a professional musician." David had been too busy working to pay attention, but when he listened carefully, he was shocked. I don't know, he said, but you're right. That music is extraordinary. David quickly finished serving the soup and went to look out the window. He saw Maya playing with such skill and passion that he could hardly believe his eyes. This was the same girl Pierre had laughed at just an hour ago. Inside the restaurant, people were abandoning their expensive meals to listen to Maya's performance. A wealthy businessman who had ordered the most expensive wine on the menu left his table without finishing his dinner. He stood by the window, completely captivated by the music. Incredible, he said to anyone who would listen. I've been to many concerts at the finest opera houses, but I've never heard anything quite like this. A famous actress who often came to this restaurant was dining alone at her usual table. She was known for being very critical and hard to impress. But when she heard Maya's music, she stopped eating and called her manager on the phone. You need to hear this, she told her manager. There's a young girl here who plays violin like an angel. Someone needs to discover her immediately. Maya had now been playing for 20 minutes. She moved from one beautiful piece to another without stopping. Each song showed a different side of her talent. She played classical music with perfect technique. She played folk songs with deep emotion. She played modern songs with creative arrangements that no one had ever heard before. The crowd outside was growing larger every minute. People from other restaurants and shops nearby heard the music and came to investigate. A group of teenagers who had been walking down the street stopped when they heard Maya playing a popular song in a classical style. This is so cool, one of the teenagers said. She's making that pop song sound like it belongs in a concert hall. How old do you think she is? Asked another teenager. She looks about our age, but she plays like someone who has studied music for decades. An old man with a walking stick had slowly made his way to the alley. He stood at the back of the crowd, listening with a big smile on his face. Reminds me of the great violinists I heard in my youth, he told the people near him. This girl has a gift from heaven. Inside the restaurant kitchen, all work had completely stopped. The cooks, dishwashers, and servers were all gathered by the window, watching Maya in amazement. Jean, the head cook, was supposed to be preparing meals for the customers, but he couldn't focus on anything except Maya's music. We should be cooking, Marie said, but she didn't move away from the window. The customers aren't eating anyway, John replied. They're all listening to her too. Sophie was crying softly. I feel so ashamed, she said. We were so cruel to her. We judged her by her clothes and her appearance. We never gave her a chance to show us who she really is. Pierre was feeling the same shame. He remembered how he had laughed at Maya when she first asked to play for food. He remembered how he had made her go to the back alley because he thought she would embarrass the restaurant. Now he realized that Maya was bringing more joy and beauty to this place than it had ever had before. Mr. Beaumont, the restaurant manager, was having similar thoughts. He had built his business by catering to wealthy people who cared about appearance and status. But here was a poor girl in old clothes who had more real talent than anyone who had ever set foot in his restaurant. He watched his customers through the window. They were all outside in the cold, listening to Maya's music with pure happiness on their faces. They had forgotten about their expensive meals and their important business discussions. They were just human beings enjoying something beautiful. Maybe I've been thinking about this business all wrong, Mr. Beaumont said to himself. Maya finished playing a sad, beautiful piece that told the story of a lost love. As the last note faded into the cold air, the entire crowd was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Soon everyone was applauding loudly. Maya opened her eyes and saw all the people looking at her with admiration and respect. She had never performed for so many people before. She felt scared but also proud. Her grandmother would have been so happy to see this moment. A well-dressed woman in the crowd called out, "Play another one, please." "You're wonderful." Other people in the crowd agreed. "Yes, please don't stop," someone else shouted. "We could listen to you all night," said another voice. Maya felt tears of happiness in her eyes. These were the same people who had been laughing at her an hour ago. Now they were asking her to continue playing. They appreciated her music and her talent. She wiped her eyes and smiled. She lifted her violin again and began to play one of her grandmother's most beautiful pieces. It was a love song that told the story of two people who found each other after a long separation. As Maya played this romantic piece, couples in the crowd moved closer together. The music was so emotional and powerful that it made people think about the people they loved. Some people in the crowd were holding hands. Some were hugging. A woman in an expensive dress was standing with her husband near the front of the crowd. They had been married for 20 years but had grown apart over time. As they listened to Maya's music together, they remembered why they had fallen in love. The husband reached for his wife's hand. She looked at him with surprise and then smiled. They hadn't held hands in months, but Maya's music had reminded them of their connection. "This music is magical," the wife whispered to her husband. "It's not just the music," her husband replied. "It's the girl playing it. She has something special inside her." Near the back of the crowd, a young couple who had been arguing earlier were now standing peacefully together. The boy put his arm around the girl's shoulders as they listened to Maya's performance. "I'm sorry we were fighting," the boy said quietly. "Me too," the girl replied. "This music makes our problems seem so small." Maya continued playing, not knowing how her music was affecting all these people. She was focused on sharing the gift her grandmother had given her. Each note she played carried the love and wisdom her grandmother had taught her. As she played, Maya began to feel less hungry and cold. The music was giving her energy and warmth. The appreciation of the crowd was feeding her soul in a way that food could never do. The 30 minutes that Pierre had originally given her were almost over. But no one was thinking about time limits anymore. Everyone just wanted the beautiful music to continue forever. Among the crowd listening to Maya was a woman who understood music better than anyone else there. Her name was Elena Rostova, and she had dedicated her entire life to the violin. Elena was 62 years old and had gray hair pulled back in an elegant style. She wore a simple but expensive coat and walked with the graceful posture of someone who had spent decades performing on stage. She had been having dinner alone at a quiet table in the restaurant when she first heard Maya's music. At first, Elena thought the restaurant had started playing recorded classical music. But the sound was too pure, too alive to be a recording. She realized someone was playing violin nearby, and the quality of the performance made her heart race with excitement. Elena had been the principal violinist for the City Symphony Orchestra for 25 years. She had performed in the greatest concert halls around the world. She had played with famous conductors and musicians. After retiring from performing, she had become a teacher at the most prestigious music school in the city. In all her years of experience, Elena had learned to recognize true talent when she heard it. She could tell the difference between someone who had learned technique and someone who had music in their soul. Maya clearly had both. Elena left her dinner without finishing it and went outside to join the crowd. She pushed gently through the people until she could see Maya clearly. What she saw amazed her even more than what she heard. Maya was young, probably only 16 or 17 years old. Her clothes were poor and worn. Her shoes had holes. But the way she held her violin and moved her bow showed years of proper training. Her posture was perfect. Her fingering was precise. Her bowing technique was flawless. "This is impossible," Elena thought to herself. "How can someone so young, someone who is obviously poor, play with such professional skill?" Elena listened carefully to Maya's playing. She noticed that Maya knew complex classical pieces that most music students didn't learn until they had studied for many years. But Maya wasn't just playing the notes correctly. She was interpreting the music with deep understanding and emotion. When Maya transitioned from a classical piece to a folk song, Elena was even more impressed. Maya arranged the folk melody with sophisticated harmonies and variations that showed real musical creativity. This wasn't just someone who had memorized a few songs. This was a true musician with natural talent and extensive training. Elena watched Maya's face as she played. Maya's eyes were closed and she had a peaceful expression. She was completely lost in the music. Elena recognized this state. It was what real musicians called being one with the music. It was something that couldn't be taught. Either you had it naturally or you didn't. Tears began to form in Elena's eyes. In her many years of teaching, she had worked with hundreds of young violinists. Some were technically good, some worked very hard. But she had never found a student with the combination of natural talent, technical skill, and emotional depth that Maya was displaying. Maya finished the romantic piece she had been playing and began something new. Elena immediately recognized it as a Bach concerto, one of the most difficult pieces in the violin repertoire. Most violin students needed years of advanced study before they could even attempt this piece, but Maya played it perfectly. Not only did she hit every note correctly, but she brought out the mathematical beauty and spiritual depth that made Bach's music so special. Elena had heard this concerto performed by world-famous violinists, and Maya's interpretation was as good as any of them. "My God," Elena whispered. "Where did this child learn to play like this?" The people around Elena were also amazed by Maya's performance, but they didn't understand music the way Elena did. They knew it sounded beautiful, but Elena could appreciate the technical mastery behind every note. When Maya finished the Bach concerto, Elena began clapping loudly. She called out, "Bravo! Magnificent!" in a voice that carried clearly above the crowd. Maya opened her eyes and looked toward the voice. She saw Elena's face among all the others, but something about Elena was different. Elena was looking at her with an expression of deep respect and understanding, the look of one musician appreciating another. Elena waited until Maya had lowered her violin. Then she walked forward through the crowd. People moved aside for her because they could sense that she was someone important. "Excuse me, dear," Elena said when she reached Maya. Her voice was warm and kind, but also filled with excitement. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Maya was surprised that this elegant older woman wanted to talk to her. "Yes, ma'am," Maya said politely. "My name is Elena Rostova," Elena said.
I am a violin teacher, and I have been playing and teaching violin for more than 40 years. Maya's eyes widened.
Even though she was young and had grown up poor, she knew Elena's name. Her grandmother had told her about Elena Rostova, one of the greatest violinists of her generation. You're Elena Rostova," Maya said with amazement. "My grandmother told me about you. She said you were one of the best violinists in the world." Elena smiled warmly. "Your grandmother had good taste in music, I see. But right now I want to talk about you. Where did you learn to play like that?" Maya felt nervous talking to such a famous musician. "My grandmother taught me," she said quietly. "She gave me this violin and taught me how to play." "Your grandmother must have been an extraordinary teacher," Elena said. "What was her name?" "Isabella Chen," Maya answered. Elena's face went completely white. She staggered backward as if someone had hit her. Did you say Isabella Chen?" she asked in a shaking voice. "Yes," Maya said, worried that something was wrong. "Did you know her?" Elena sat down heavily on a nearby box. She looked like she might faint. "Isabella Chen," she repeated. "I thought she was dead." "We all thought she was dead." Maya was confused. "My grandmother did die 2 years ago. But why do you look so shocked?" Elena looked up at Maya with tears streaming down her face. "My dear child," she said, "your grandmother was Isabella Chen. Not just any Isabella Chen. She was the Isabella Chen, one of the greatest violinists who ever lived." Maya stared at Elena in disbelief. "What do you mean?" "Isabella Chen was famous around the world 30 years ago," Elena explained. "She played in the finest concert halls. People traveled from other countries just to hear her perform. She was a legend. But then suddenly she disappeared. No one knew what happened to her. The music world mourned her as if she had died." Maya felt dizzy. But she was just my grandmother. She lived in a small apartment and taught me to play violin. She never told me she was famous." Elena stood up and walked closer to Maya. She looked carefully at the violin Maya was holding. "May I see your violin?" she asked gently. Maya hesitantly handed over her grandmother's violin. Elena examined it carefully, turning it over in her hands. She looked at the wood, the strings, and the small labels inside. Elena gasped. "This is it," she said. "This is Isabella's violin. I remember it from her concerts. It's a 1920 Giuseppe Fiorini, one of the finest violins ever made. This instrument alone is worth more than most people's houses." Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her grandmother had always told her the violin was special, but Maya had never imagined it was this valuable or famous. "But that's not the most important thing," Elena continued. "The most important thing is that Isabella passed her gift to you. You have inherited not just her violin, but her musical soul." Elena handed the violin back to Maya with great care. "My dear," she said, "you are not just a talented street musician. You are the granddaughter of a legend, and you have the potential to become a legend yourself." Elena sat down beside Maya on a wooden crate in the alley. Her hands were still shaking from the shock of discovering who Maya really was. The crowd around them had grown quiet, sensing that something important was happening between the famous teacher and the young musician. "I need to tell you about your grandmother," Elena said softly. "Isabella Chen was not just famous, she was a miracle. When she played, people said it was like hearing the voice of heaven itself." Maya listened carefully, trying to understand how her quiet, simple grandmother could have been such an important person. Elena continued, "I was just a young student when Isabella was at the height of her career. I remember the first time I heard her play. It was at the Grand Concert Hall, and she was performing with the National Symphony. I had never heard anything so beautiful in my life. But grandmother never told me any of this," Maya said with confusion. "She lived in a tiny apartment. She wore old clothes. She cooked simple meals for me. How could she have been famous?" Elena smiled sadly. That's exactly the kind of person Isabella was. Fame and money never mattered to her. All she cared about was music and the people she loved. Elena paused and looked at Maya's violin case, which was still open on the ground. "I remember reading in the newspapers about Isabella's last concert. It was 32 years ago. She was at the peak of her career. Only 28 years old and already considered one of the greatest violinists alive." "What happened?" Maya asked. "Nobody knew for sure," Elena replied. "Isabella gave a magnificent performance that night. The audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted for 15 minutes. But after that concert, she simply vanished. She canceled all her future performances. She disappeared from the music world completely." Elena stood up and walked a few steps, remembering those distant days. For months, newspapers and music magazines tried to find her. Concert halls offered her huge amounts of money to come back. Famous conductors begged her to play with their orchestras. But Isabella Chen had vanished like smoke. Some people thought she had died in an accident, Elena continued. Others believed she had become sick and couldn't play anymore. There were rumors that she had gone crazy from the pressure of being famous. But nobody knew the truth. Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. Why didn't she ever tell me about this? Elena returned to sit beside Maya. "I think I know why. Your grandmother valued love and family more than fame and success. She probably chose to leave the music world to have a normal life, to get married, to raise children. She got married to my grandfather," Maya said, "but he died when I was very small. And my mother died when I was 8 years old." Elena's expression became even more gentle. "So Isabella raised you by herself?" "Yes," Maya nodded. "It was just grandmother and me for many years. She taught me to read, to cook, to take care of myself. And every day she taught me to play violin." "Now I understand," Elena said with admiration. "Isabella gave up her career to be a grandmother. She poured all her musical knowledge and love into teaching you. In a way, you became her greatest performance, not on a stage but in real life." Elena picked up Maya's violin and examined it again. "This violin has an incredible history. Isabella bought it when she was just starting her career. She saved money for 2 years to afford it. She used to say that this violin chose her, not the other way around. Grandmother told me the same thing," Maya said with wonder. "She said the violin would take care of me if I took care of it." "Isabella was right," Elena said. "But Maya, you need to understand something very important. This violin is not just valuable because it's old or expensive. It's valuable because it was played by Isabella Chen. Music collectors and museums around the world would pay any amount of money to own this instrument." Maya looked worried. "Does that mean someone will try to take it away from me?" "No, dear," Elena said quickly. "The violin belongs to you. Isabella gave it to you, and that makes it yours forever. But you need to understand what a treasure you have been carrying around." Elena pointed to some small marks on the violin. "Do you see these tiny scratches and wear marks? Each one tells a story. These are from Isabella's performances in the greatest concert halls in the world. This violin has been heard by presidents and kings. It has moved thousands of people to tears." Maya ran her fingers gently over the marks Elena was showing her. She had seen them many times before, but had never known they were so important. "There's something else you should know," Elena said. "Isabella didn't just disappear from the music world. Before she left, she recorded several albums. Those recordings are still considered some of the most beautiful violin music ever captured. People still buy them today." "She made recordings?" Maya asked with surprise. "Oh yes," Elena replied. "I have all of them. Her recording of the Brahms Violin Concerto is legendary. Her interpretation of Bach's partitas is studied by violin students everywhere. When I get home tonight, I'll send you copies of everything she recorded. Maya was overwhelmed by all this information. Her simple grandmother, who had made her soup when she was sick and helped her with homework, had been a world-famous artist. But Maya, Elena said seriously, the most important thing Isabella gave you was not the violin or the fame she could have passed on. She gave you her musical gift. The way you play, that cannot be taught in any school. That comes from your blood, from your heart, from the connection between you and Isabella. Elena stood up and looked directly into Maya's eyes. When I heard you playing tonight, I felt the same magic I felt when I first heard Isabella perform 30 years ago. You have inherited more than her violin, Maya. You have inherited her soul. The crowd around them had been listening to parts of this conversation, and many people were crying. They realized they had witnessed not just a beautiful performance, but the discovery of a musical legacy that had been hidden for decades. Pierre, the restaurant worker who had been so cruel to Maya earlier, pushed through the crowd. His face was red with shame and excitement. "Miss Maya," he said, "I owe you a huge apology. I had no idea. We had no idea who you were." "I didn't know who I was either," Maya replied honestly. Mr. Beaumont, the restaurant manager, also approached them. "Miss Chen," he said formally, "it would be a great honor if you would consider performing at our restaurant regularly. I can offer you more money than you could earn anywhere else." But Elena held up her hand. "Gentlemen, I appreciate your offers, but Maya has much bigger opportunities ahead of her. Playing in restaurant alleys is far below her talents." Elena turned to Maya. "My dear, would you be willing to come with me? I have some phone calls to make tonight. By tomorrow morning, I think your life is going to change in ways you cannot imagine." Elena took Maya to her elegant apartment across the city. Maya had never seen such a beautiful home before. The walls were covered with photographs of Elena performing with famous orchestras. There were awards and certificates everywhere. But what amazed Maya most were the violins. Elena had a collection of rare and beautiful instruments displayed in glass cases. "Sit down." "Dear," Elena said, pointing to a comfortable chair near the fireplace. "I need to make some phone calls, but first let me get you some food." Maya realized she was still very hungry. In all the excitement of the evening, she had forgotten that she hadn't eaten for 2 days. Elena brought her warm soup, fresh bread, and hot tea. Maya ate gratefully while Elena prepared to make her calls. "The first person I need to call is Dr. James Morrison," Elena explained. "He's the director of the Royal Conservatory of Music. It's the best music school in our country." Elena dialed the number. Even though it was late at night, Dr. Morrison answered the phone immediately when he saw Elena's name. "Elena," Dr. Morrison said, "what's so urgent that you're calling me at this hour?" "James, I need you to listen to something," Elena said. She put the phone on speaker and asked Maya to play a short piece. Maya was nervous about playing for someone she couldn't see, but she trusted Elena. She played a beautiful melody that her grandmother had taught her, a simple song that showcased her pure tone and perfect technique. When Maya finished, there was silence on the phone for a long moment. "Elena," Dr. Morrison said slowly. "Who is that?" "Her name is Maya Chen. She's 16 years old and she's the granddaughter of Isabella Chen." Dr. Morrison gasped. "Isabella Chen?" "But Isabella disappeared decades ago. Everyone thought she was dead." "Isabella did disappear from the music world," Elena explained, "but she spent the last years of her life teaching her granddaughter. James, this girl has inherited everything. Isabella's talent, her technique, her musical soul. And she's been living in poverty, playing on the streets for food." "This is incredible," Dr. Morrison said. "Elena, bring her to the school tomorrow morning. I'll cancel all my meetings. We need to hear her play in person, and we need to offer her a full scholarship immediately." Elena smiled at Maya. "Did you hear that? The director of the finest music school in the country wants to meet you tomorrow." But Elena wasn't finished making calls. She dialed another number. "Hello, Margaret? It's Elena Rostova. I know it's late, but I have something extraordinary to tell you." Margaret Chen was the director of the National Symphony Orchestra. She had known Elena for many years and respected her judgment about musical talent. "What's going on, Elena?" Margaret asked. Elena explained about finding Maya and discovering her connection to Isabella Chen. Then she had Maya play another piece over the phone. Margaret was amazed. "Elena, is this real? Is this girl really Isabella's granddaughter?" I've seen the family photos, Elena said. And Margaret, when you hear her play in person, you'll understand. This is not just talent. This is destiny. Bring her to our youth auditions next week, Margaret said immediately. If she's as good as you say, I want her to perform with our youth symphony immediately. And Elena, if she's really Isabella's granddaughter, the media is going to go crazy when they find out. Elena made several more phone calls that night. She called music critics from major newspapers. She called representatives from recording companies. She called directors of famous concert halls. Each person she spoke to became excited when they heard Maya's story and her playing. While Elena was making calls, Maya explored the apartment. She found Elena's library, which was filled with books about music history. She opened one book and found a chapter about famous violinists. There, on page 247, was a photograph of her grandmother. Maya stared at the picture in shock. Her grandmother was young in the photo, maybe 25 years old. She was wearing an elegant black dress and holding a violin. She looked confident and beautiful. The caption under the photo read, "Isabella Chen, the most promising young violinist of her generation." Maya called Elena over to show her the book. "Look, it's really her." Elena looked at the photograph and then at Maya. "You look so much like her," she said with amazement. "You have the same eyes, the same hands, even the same way of holding your head when you concentrate." Elena continued making phone calls until very late that night. Each conversation brought new opportunities for Maya. By the time Elena finished, Maya had been offered a full scholarship to the Royal Conservatory of Music, an audition with the National Symphony Orchestra's youth program, a meeting with a major recording company, an invitation to perform at the International Young Musicians Festival interest from 3 different talent management companies. Maya, Elena said when she finally put down the phone. In one evening, you've gone from playing for food in an alley to having more opportunities than most musicians get in their entire careers. Maya felt overwhelmed. "I don't understand how this happened so quickly." "It happened because you have extraordinary talent," Elena explained. "But also because your grandmother was Isabella Chen. The music world has been waiting 30 years to hear from Isabella again. When they learn that her granddaughter has inherited her gift, it will be like Isabella has returned from the dead." Elena sat down beside Maya. "But I want you to understand something important. These opportunities are wonderful, but they also come with pressure and responsibility. Once the world knows who you are, your life will never be the same." "What do you mean?" Maya asked. "You'll be famous," Elena said. "People will want to hear you play everywhere. Newspapers will write stories about you. You'll travel to different countries to perform. You'll make more money than your family ever dreamed of having." Maya thought about her father, who had been unemployed for months. She thought about their small apartment with the broken heater. She thought about all the times she had gone to bed hungry. "Will I be able to help my family?" Maya asked. "Of course," Elena said. "Maya, within a year you'll probably be earning enough money to buy your family a beautiful house. You'll be able to give your father the security he's been looking for." But Elena's expression became serious. "However, you need to understand that fame also has disadvantages. You'll have less privacy. People will always be watching you and judging your performances. There will be pressure to always be perfect." Maya was quiet for a long time, thinking about everything Elena had told her. "What would my grandmother want me to do?" Maya finally asked. Elena smiled. "I think Isabella would want you to share your gift with the world. She gave up her career to raise her family, but she spent years teaching you to play. I think she always hoped that someday you would return to the music world that she had left behind." Elena stood up and walked to her window, which looked out over the city. "Maya, you have a choice to make. You can continue living quietly, playing music just for yourself and your family, or you can step into the spotlight and become the musician you were born to be." Maya looked at her grandmother's violin, which was resting in its case beside her chair. She remembered all the hours her grandmother had spent teaching her. She remembered how proud her grandmother had looked whenever Maya played a piece perfectly. "I want to try," Maya said quietly. "I want to see if I can be the musician grandmother always believed I could be." Elena turned around with tears in her eyes. "Then tomorrow we begin your new life." 6 months had passed since that cold December night when Maya first played in the alley behind Le Jardin restaurant. Now she stood backstage at the Grand Concert Hall, the most prestigious venue in the city. In just a few minutes, she would walk onto the same stage where her grandmother had given her final performance 32 years ago. Maya wore an elegant black dress that Elena had helped her choose. Her hair was styled professionally, and she wore simple pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother. But the most important thing she carried was the same violin her grandmother had given her, the 1920 Giuseppe Fiorini, that had once moved audiences around the world. Elena stood beside Maya backstage, checking to make sure everything was perfect. "How do you feel, dear?" Elena asked. "Nervous," Maya admitted, "but also excited. I keep thinking about grandmother and how proud she would be." Elena smiled. "Isabella is watching over you tonight. I can feel it." Maya's life had changed dramatically over the past 6 months. The day after Elena discovered her, Maya had auditioned at the Royal Conservatory and been accepted immediately with a full scholarship. Dr. Morrison had called her performance the most remarkable audition in the school's 150-year history within a week. Maya had also auditioned for the National Symphony Orchestra's youth program. The conductor, Margaret Chen, had been so impressed that she offered Maya the position of principal violinist, an honor usually reserved for students who had been in the program for years. The media attention had been incredible. When newspapers learned that Isabella Chen's granddaughter had been discovered playing for food on the streets, the story spread around the world. Music magazines wrote articles about Maya, television shows invited her for interviews, social media posts about her performances received millions of views. Maya's family life had also transformed completely. With the money from her first recording contract, Maya had been able to buy her family a beautiful house in a safe neighborhood. Her father had stopped looking for work because Maya's income was enough to support them comfortably. But more importantly, her father had started smiling again. The stress and worry that had filled his face for months had disappeared. "Maya," Elena said, "it's almost time. The concert hall is completely sold out. There are 2,500 people waiting to hear you play." Maya looked through the curtain at the audience. Every seat was filled. She recognized some faces from television and newspapers, famous musicians, government officials, wealthy business people. But she also saw regular families who had saved money to buy tickets to hear the granddaughter of the legendary Isabella Chen. In the front row sat Pierre, Jean, Marie, and Sophie from Le Jardin restaurant. Mr. Beaumont had bought them tickets as a way of apologizing for how they had treated Maya. They all looked excited and proud, as if Maya was their own daughter. Also in the audience was Elena's elderly teacher, Professor Anderson, who had flown in from another country specifically to hear Maya perform. He was 92 years old and had heard all the great violinists of the past century. When reporters asked him why he had traveled so far, he said, "I heard Isabella Chen perform when she was young. If her granddaughter has inherited even half of her talent, this will be a historic night." Maya's accompanist for tonight was the same pianist who had played with her grandmother decades ago. His name was William Foster, and he was now 70 years old. When he learned about Maya, he came out of retirement specifically to play with her. "It's like a dream," William had told Maya during their rehearsals. "Playing with you brings back memories of making music with Isabella. You have the same spirit, the same connection to the music." The concert program included 3 pieces. Maya would begin with the same Bach concerto she had played in the alley that first night. Then she would perform a piece that her grandmother had been famous for, Brahms' Violin Concerto in D major. Finally, she would end with a special arrangement she had created herself, combining a classical piece with the folk song her grandmother had taught her. "Ladies and gentlemen," came the voice of the announcer, "please welcome Maya Chen." Maya walked onto the stage carrying her violin. The audience rose to their feet and applauded for 3 full minutes before she even began to play. Some people were crying with emotion. They knew they were witnessing something historic, the return of Isabella Chen's musical legacy. Maya waited for the applause to end, then positioned her violin and began to play the Bach concerto. From the very first note, the audience was captivated. Her technique was flawless, but more than that, her interpretation was mature and deeply emotional. She didn't sound like a 17-year-old student. She sounded like a master musician with decades of experience. When she finished the Bach piece, the audience applauded so loudly that the building seemed to shake. Maya smiled and bowed, then prepared for the Brahms concerto. This piece was much longer and more challenging. It was the same concerto that had made her grandmother famous. As Maya played, many older audience members closed their eyes and remembered hearing Isabella perform this same piece years ago. The resemblance was remarkable, not just in technique but in the emotional depth and musical understanding. During one particularly beautiful passage, Maya noticed that Elena was crying. So were many other people in the audience. The music was so moving that it touched something deep in people's hearts. When Maya finished the Brahms concerto, the audience went wild. People stood and applauded for 10 minutes. Some called out bravo, others simply wiped tears from their eyes. But Maya had one more surprise for them. For her final piece, she had arranged a combination of Pachelbel's canon, the same piece she had played in the alley, with the folk song her grandmother had taught her. It was a way of honoring both her classical training and her family heritage. As Maya played this final piece, she thought about her journey. 6 months ago, she had been a hungry teenager asking to play for food. Tonight, she was performing in front of the most important people in the music world. But in many ways, she was still the same person, someone who loved music and wanted to share that love with others. When Maya finished her performance, the audience rose to their feet for a standing ovation that lasted 20 minutes. People were cheering, crying, and calling for more. Maya bowed again and again, overwhelmed by the response. Elena joined Maya on stage and presented her with a bouquet of flowers. The two women embraced, and Elena whispered in Maya's ear, "Your grandmother would be so proud." But Maya's greatest moment came when she saw her father in the audience. He was sitting in the 5th row wearing the new suit Maya had bought for him. He was crying with joy and pride. For the first time in years, he looked truly happy. After the concert, Maya was surrounded by reporters, music critics, and industry professionals. Everyone wanted to interview her and offer her new opportunities. Record companies were competing to sign her to bigger contracts. Concert halls around the world were inviting her to perform. But Maya didn't forget the lesson her grandmother had taught her, that music was about love, not fame or money. She announced that she was starting the Isabella Chen Foundation, which would provide free violin lessons and instruments to children from poor families. "I never want another child to go hungry while carrying a gift that could bring joy to the world," Maya told the reporters. Every year on the anniversary of that first night at Le Jardin restaurant, Maya returned to play one song in the alley where her journey had begun. She played the same Pachelbel's canon that had first amazed the crowd, and she always ended by saying, "This is for you, grandmother. Thank you for teaching me that beautiful music can come from anywhere, and that love is more important than anything else." Maya's story had taught everyone who heard it that talent and beauty could be found in the most unexpected places. The girl who had once asked for just a piece of food had become one of the most celebrated musicians in the world. But more importantly, she had learned to use her gift to help others and to honor the memory of the grandmother who had given her everything. In the years that followed, Maya would perform in the greatest concert halls around the world. She would win awards and earn millions of dollars, but she would never forget that cold December night when her life changed forever. And she would always remember that the most important performance is the one that comes from the heart.